Right, 6 minutes past the top of the hour. Karibu sana. This is Morning Cafe. Glad to have you today. I'm a plug on matters relationships. Nilikuwa nawaambia tomorrow is Girlfriend's Day. Nitakushinda nimewaambia gentlemen out here. So that mkumbuke, kesho isifike, unakasirikiwa, unashangaa, why am I, mbona amekasirika by the way? Because tomorrow is Girlfriend's Day. And speaking of which, today the fact that we're talking about relationships, we want to talk about something that you may have gotten yourself into or are planning to, and you're wondering, how do I solve all this? So imagine this. You're about 25 years old, you're either a guy or a lady, and you're in probably a marriage or a relationship, and you had kids. That relationship broke off, and you're now trying to navigate another relationship, and your partner as well has children. So how do you navigate all that? How do you parent these children, your own children as well as your parents, your partner's children, a whole blended kind of a family? Well, we have the right man for this conversation, and they'll be telling us what they think. You can also be telling us what you think about this. How can you navigate this? How do you make a blended family work together really and have a very strong kind of a bond? Talk to us on our socials. 0793 267 279 is our WhatsApp number. We'll definitely be glad to hear your voice on our live calls. 0795 045 864. 22047 is our SMS number, and on Facebook we've posted that question there just for you. Utuambie what you think about it. Let me introduce our guests. Judith Ngerechi, she's a wellness coach as well as a champion for women's rights and vulnerable children. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Judith understands the fact that a whole champion on matters women's rights. You deal with children hands-on, so you understand this particular dynamics in this day and age. Richard Ziwa Zimbalist, he is a counselor. He deals with young adults, children as well, in this particular day and age kind of dynamics. So these are the right minds for this conversation. And our question of the day for you, how do we deal with, let me just get that for you. How can blended families effectively work together and build strong relationships? That is our question of the day for you. Judith, let me start with you. First of all, good morning. Even as you also give us a brief intro of who you are, what are your thoughts on the day and age, this day and age dynamics of blended families?
Thank you very much, Stanley. My name is Judith Ngerechi, and I am a champion for women's rights, and most especially the teenage moms. Blended families are a reality that we're living with, especially in this new age. And the fact that it's affecting a lot of children, it's a conversation that we need to have. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to discuss how it's affecting the young individuals, children, and the family setup all together. So I'm looking forward to having an interesting conversation. Thank you.
How about you, Zio? Definitely as someone who interacts with young adults, have you come across this? This is one of those 1 in 100 cases.
Thank you, Stanley. It's a joy to be here. I think this is one interesting subject that touches me deeply because I'm one of those who grew up in a blended family.
Interesting.
My mother comes from the blended family, the first sibling of 70 children. We grew up in a family where on average we're about 15 people in the home. So having left my mom when I was 3 years old to join the rest of my other siblings to grow up together with my stepmom, who did an incredible job, I can rightfully say this is something too close to home. But dealing with the groups of people we work with on a constant, as Love Foundation and Beyond Success, these are themes we relate with, especially when you go into our curriculum or what we use in lesson number 4 on relationship. You grapple with the idea that this is all too familiar almost every single day of your life. You see young people jump into one relationship to another relationship, and before they go into another relationship, they already have a baby. But they've never been able to talk candidly about the themes that are related to this newfound relationship. Mm-hmm. you have a 2-year-old or 3-year-old and you jump into another relationship to start off a husband and wife kind of relationship, but there's a child trapped in that relationship. So the man is going to struggle with that experience. I kind of try to imagine what my stepmom went through. A 3-year-old baby brought to you has left the mother. Every attempt to love me, I rejected it.
Or you consulted, yes, you're 3 years old, but was there any consultation on your part?
No, there's hardly anything like that. Because if you look at African context in matters family, we are polygamous families, though we don't want to talk about those conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Others call it bigamy, but we exist in an environment where your next door neighbor has more than 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, and we seem to celebrate some of those cultural experiences, but has a lot of its own pros and cons that work against the original plan that it should be, where it's a husband and wife experience. Because a child is drawn into this newfound relationship and is not consulted, and they do not know how they're going to go through it. And they've hardly had any counseling or therapy to help them through that new journey. That is the husband, the wife, and the child. So a child has a different love language. The husband has a different love language. The mother has a different love language. Put them together, you're going to see struggle. So if my love language is spending quality time, and I've come with my mother, we've been spending a lot of quality time together. Quite likely, I might go into this relationship, the husband could be that actually his love language is also quality time, but his quality time is watching sports. So every time he wants to spend quality time with my mother, who is his wife, he'll be enjoying sports. That's how he wants his wife to spend time with him.
Yeah.
But quality time to the mother and the child is actually them spending time together.
Yes.
Imagine the drama that will be in the house. It's going to be a fight. Let's say the love language is gifts. Kids love gifts. That's the language they understand. Even strangers, you pick on any one of us, anytime, give us a gift. We'll be very fast to pick it. There's no way I can bring you 1,000 shillings and say, would you care to receive this? Make use of it. You receive it without asking questions. But a child, they have a way they receive gifts.
Yes.
But who's giving the gift? If it's a birthday cake, they're used to having the birthday cake given by the mother. Now I'm living with a different mother. However well-meaning she might be, I might resist to receive that cake as a birthday gift.
So, Judith, does it mean that for a child below, let's say around 2 years, a child that hasn't started to comprehend what things are around this person, it's relatively easier to for this partner to get into a relationship?
I think it's easier to bond, to form a relationship with a small baby than a child who is aware, because before kids grow up, the only attachment they have is someone who shows them care. For as long as you're able to show care, they will reciprocate. But you see, older kids is a bit different because they understand, they're aware. And then when a different person comes into the equation, it's like someone is taking my mom away from me, or someone is taking my dad away from me. Then there tends to be a bit of a competition for attention first, because when you get into a new relationship, and I think all of us have been in new relationships, it is, you get attached very quickly, and then it really draws you in.
You're there, you want to impress. And
yes, you do so many, you go out of your way to do all manner of things. Now, who gets affected the most? It's this child, because while you're giving attention to your new significant other, the child that came from a previous relationship, they tend to lose you, and you don't even realize that you're losing something. And then you start wondering, why are my kids, you know, they are detached. Why are they behaving like this? You will start saying things like they are acting out, or they don't understand, they are small children. But who is talking to them about these relationships? Because we don't consider the children that are involved.
And Zio tells us he was not consulted at any given early.
Yeah.
So how do you sit down with a 3-year-old child, for example? Because we're taking a look at a 3-year-old child. This is someone who ameanza kuingia shule. There's some schools that you'd find 3-year-old kids. Yeah. So let's say this is a child who is walking and they understand some bits and pieces around their life. They understand some elements of love, hate, some of these emotions really. Yeah. How do you sit down with a 3-year-old child and explain to them, baba, mama, mimi kuna mtu niko naye hapa, and utaanza kubuita daddy.
You can't tell a child like that at there's someone here, but you see, you create friendships, because if you know you are going to be, or if you're in a relationship with someone, you start, like how you bring them into your kids' life is sometimes assuming you take your kids over the weekend for, you take them to a park, or you take them to fun activities in a mall. You have to have that person kind of blending into the equation as a friend, so that by the time you're saying that, you know, we are going to see XYZ, and people need to stop telling their children, you're going to meet Uncle Stanley, you're going to meet Uncle so and so, you know, because now it becomes confusing, because now when uncle moves in, or when mom moves in with this uncle, then who does he become? You know, it becomes very difficult. But you create that friendship so that by the time you're forming this relationship, now this child is aware there's someone, that mom hangs out with someone, or dad is hanging out with a certain lady. So then the mind starts programming, because I'm telling you, this generation, the kids are much more aware than we were when we were younger.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation that you build a friendship, you create an avenue where this child can be able to form some relationship. Because again, kids will tell you, if a child rejects someone, something is definitely not adding up, because you can be able to pick. And that will also help you to understand if you're going to continue with this relationship or it has to stop there. And then I also, my advice to people is get therapy. Like, make sure you get in a setup where you have a therapy session with your child. Then you walk through that journey, so that by the time you're introducing this lover, you're bringing them into your equation, the child is much more comfortable, is in a place where they can understand that mom is in a relationship. Yes.
Right. Just a reminder again, talk to us on our social media handles. First of all, on WhatsApp, I'll be taking a look at them, 0793-267-279. You can tell us if you've ever been in this particular experience. Uko wewe uliingia, or rather you're actually the child. Your father, your mother came in with even other children. How did you handle your situation yote? Or yourself as a parent, you're trying to get into this new relationship. How are you handling all that? Tuambie. Also call us live, 0795-045864. Picking from what she says, as a child, it's akikataa huyu mtu mwingine, there's something that maybe might be amiss. But then let's talk about, let's say now this is a child who is in his or her teenage years. We often say the whole adage of it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Let's call this teens, quote-unquote old dogs, because they have lived for about 14 years, 15 years, 13 years plus of their lives. And they have seen you, so you're a stranger really to this person. How do you go about with that conversation?
Thank you, Stanley. One, there's a place where you need to go from good intentions to good actions. You have to be practical. The assumption is that when you get into the relationship, is that it will work out. And that ideally should be the main focus to your relationship, that you want it to work out and you want to thrive in this new formed relationship. And I desire that actually you thrive. But one of the things is you should go for, as an actionable point, make an opportunity to normalize counseling and therapy. Just for you, the two people who are interested in the relationship, then the young child, the young adult, the teenager who is involved into this relationship. Because it's a whole new dynamic. One, you come to work the relationship. And that's true. But the reality is, when you get into the practicality of this relationship, things are not going to roll the way you really assume that it's going to work out. The expectations are usually exaggerated. You enter the relationship and you're going to assume the role of a father. Yeah. This child is not going to call you dad. Mm-hmm. You have to earn that. Yeah. Trust must be earned. It's not voluntarily given in such relationship. So if you're going to earn it, there are things you're going to do and learn to unlearn.
So no,
you're going to tell her, I am the head of the family. Mm-hmm. You started off on the wrong place. One, this child has a dad. They might not even know who the dad is, but they have a dad.
Yeah.
And they would rightfully so confirm to you that you're not my father. Mm. So the first precedent would be check out to find out what is the love language of this child. You might think that she's in or for hugs. and you come to hug the child and say, this dude is a pedophilia. You came to love my mother, not me. So she will be repulsive. You give gifts, let's say perfume and all this, and she's checking you out. Why are you giving me gifts?
Yeah.
You have to earn your way into this newfound relationship. Okay, primarily I would emphasize that go for counseling and therapy for you and your significant other and this child separate. Then find a way you harmonize the three together. But as you're working on that, don't hide your head in the sand. There are certain things that you cannot exchange for that moment. One, the wife has to play the lead role to graft you into the family. That is, if she's the one who came with the baby.
She should be the bridge.
Yes, she should be able to harmonize this relationship and place an emphasis that my child, I'm not trading you for this man. You're that special for me, and you forever be my baby. But there's going to be a time where you're going to walk out of this home, because when you're 18, my idea is that you're going to go to university, and shortly after you will not be coming home to stay with us. Or if you come, you'll be visiting. But this man is going to be stuck with me for a lifetime to do life together.
But on that, still, that whole bit of communication, and still on these young adults and teenagers, they're becoming into this new family. They're meeting with other siblings there, and whatever is in their mind is, I am probably responsible for the marriage or relationship that broke between my mom or dad and our parents, really. That whole sense of guilt, how do you address this even during parenting? Because it might work both ways for both partners who have come in together and their children. They have this sense of guilt. Judith?
First of all, for any relationship, even if it's not marriage, as long as there are children involved, the moment that relationship ends, there's a period of mourning because you've lost something. And the thing that we forget as grown-ups is when we lose relationships, we forget that these children were involved as well. So this child will lose a parent because this parent is not going to be living with them. Now, how you deal with that is you need to be able to start having honest and open communication with your children as the partner that is going to be staying with the children. Now, the other partner that is living, you also must remind your kids that it is not your fault. This did not happen because of you. It is me and your mother, or it's me and your dad. Now, you having to say that also means that you have to walk the talk, in the sense that you need to make sure you keep an open communication with this child as you work through therapy. And therapy in this case will be, the mother will have to do therapy with the children by themselves, and then the dad will have to do therapy with the children by themselves, because most of the time, partners blame each other. You point fingers at each other. Then you forget that the people that are hurting the most, the people that are actually losing in this are the children, because now they were used to a nuclear family unit. They will not have that anymore. So what happens to these children? What happens to their continuity? You must create an avenue where they understand that we are not going to be together as parents, but we are still going to love you the same. We are going to make time. And again, as grown-ups, we need to be very consistent and very intentional with creating time to spend with our children, and also allow them to express themselves. Don't try and shut them down like, apana, you don't understand, you can't. They are allowed to feel the way they do. They are allowed to have resentment. And as a parent, you have to take it, because you are the people responsible for breaking the relationship. So take responsibility and allow your children to express themselves. Having that open conversation, open communication, and seeking therapy really, really helps.
Ziwa, we are really different as humans. And we all have different parenting styles. Monoli atasema, apana, me, I'm approaching this as a kind of bad cop, and others would come in as good cop. It works somewhat if you're the father and mother there all together, and you approach this and you say, where will learn you bad cop, I mean good cop, and then you reverse that. I'm not a parent yet, I don't know how that works. I'm just speaking from what I learned. But then now you're getting into a whole dynamic of it's you alone and now your partner. Your child is used to doing things in a certain way. They're used to seeing you as a strict, father. And then into the new, this new family kind of a setup, The mom is very, very soft, by the way. Yanakubalisha ni 6 am, fungulieni TV. In the previous family that they're used to, TV inafunguliwa usiku peke yake. Imezimwa ni usikisha off. How do you balance this really? That you ensure that whatever they had learned, do they have to start relearning and unlearning things?
Interesting dynamic. I saw it play out at home. But one of the things that needs to be worked on is that it's the parent of the child who must instill discipline to the child. It works as a negative script towards the other significant other if it's the one to assert discipline. It can never work in his favor or her favor.
But we say the children are watoto wa community.
No.
Wa mzazi peke yake.
Akikuwa kwa boma
Ni wa mzazi.
ni wa mzazi. And it's important to place a premium or an emphasis that what is most important in that family is the marriage of the husband and the wife. And the child must be able to adapt to what the two have agreed that would work to bring harmony within the household. Because a child can be something else without discipline. So it's the parent of the child that must be able to discipline the child, then the other comes to support in that light. But also the balance would be critical in this sense that children are playing this role for the first time. You should be full of empathy and kindness that they do not know how to navigate this, but they will manipulate the two of you to their vantage point. And kids do this. Yeah. And they will guilt you for the decision you have made. They will tell you have traded me for your newfound spouse. But you should place an emphasis that the two of us have made a decision that we're going to genuinely work out this new relationship, to care for each other. But in our commitment to do that, we'll care for you and raise you up, because you're raising young adults who are going to leave your home and start their own life. Don't be held hostage in your own home by your child. Let them know that we marry for selfish reasons. And among those is for companionship. So I can't be constantly belittling the need to work this relationship with my husband vis-a-vis my child. Create a balance in it, but one of the things that will help you faster, seek therapy and counseling. Because if you don't, you're procrastinating trouble. At every tangent you find this coming up, that coming up. So make it a continuous experience. Don't go once. Of course, at least I place emphasis on men, because men are the ones who don't go for therapy and counseling, and when they start, they don't complete. So I tell you, please seek help, outsource it. Don't say that you know, you don't know. There are certain things you literally do not know. Yeah.
And Judith, as he rightfully says, this comes up. How can this really strain a relationship? Because, I mean, yes, the two of you are trying to make this work. You have your own kids, maybe 2 or 1. Pia kuna watoto wake. Both of you have different ideas of parenting. But then for you, finally, sasa ni jioni, watoto wamelala, both of you mnaangaliana mko zile za, I thought we were team players, I thought we should be dealing with this. And the other person, no, me, I parent this is how I parent my own kids.
First of all, you cannot get into a relationship that kids are involved without having a conversation. You need to understand, you have to combine the dynamics of, if you're parenting in a different way and this other person was parenting in a different way, you have to put a united front, number one. And number two, there has to be very clear boundaries. Boundaries in the sense that there's boundaries with parents, there's boundaries with kids. Because the moment you decide to put a family together, however number of kids are coming in, you must have boundaries. There has to be a clear conversation, because by the time you're deciding to move in together with someone and there are children involved, you had conversation of, one, how are we going to parent these kids? How are we going to be disciplining them? Because I am assuming by the time you're getting to this point, these children already know each other. They have already established some sense of friendship. So by the time you're getting an outfit under one umbrella, make sure there are very clear boundaries. And I usually say this, articulate those boundaries so clearly that there is no misunderstanding. Because again, when you don't talk to kids, when you don't communicate correctly, like Ziwa has said, they will manipulate you. And manipulation goes both ways, because now this partner is coming in, they have to please these kids that are not his, or hers, and then they have to be able to find a balance of where they can feel accepted and they feel like they belong. Now, the same case for children, because if you realize that when a child realizes this partner is overcompensating, they will use that to their advantage. And eventually, the two of you as partners or as now the couple, you will end up losing the relationship. Because if you don't have boundaries, if you don't articulate it clearly, your children will pick up on the energy. And again, I usually say kids are very observant. They pay attention to what you do, not what you say. So you have to walk the talk. Yes.
So Ziwa, still on the whole now, walking the talk, what are the kind of tips that these parents here, each of them have their own children from previous relationships, but then these siblings, the parents themselves have bonded in their own way, but then the siblings have not yet bonded. What kind of tips do you think parents should have? People trying to get into this dynamics should have that they can instill in their children on bonding?
It's important to have honesty in communication. Every vibrant relationship depends on that place of trust, and trust is built by being authentic and honest in the way you communicate to your children. If the child needs to see the other parent, it took me pretty long for me to know my real mother. You know, when you're taken away from the safety of your mother to another mother, a child gets to adapt. You catch up with the rhythm. Everyone is called mom, mom, mom. So you catch up with that. I did. And I totally did not know that she's not my mother until I had her say it herself. And I was pretty much a grown kid. And then I began the desire, I need to know my mother. I wrote my dad about 7 pages of a paper, and I said, I need to know the woman who calls herself my mother. And those were my very words. I wrote why and all the things I wanted to write, and I said to him that letter. I hope he still has it.
So she's the one who told you, I am not your...
I was quite mischievous. Okay. I was not necessarily a good kid either. I'd run away home and gone to the streets and roaming the streets as a street kid. So when I came back, she saw me somewhere and she said, Richard! So when I saw her, terror struck me and I took off. And I said, I can't go back home. So when I returned home, I found a different story. So from that moment, I desired to know who my mother is. So please, in that relationship, one of the greatest gifts you can give is being truly honest and authentic and communication, especially when it relates to the other parent. If a child needs to bond and connect with that other parent, find out the dynamics of how you can work that without disrupting the new normalcy that you have, a newfound relationship.
But then also for you, how were you able to bond with now other children around you, your other siblings at that point? It's
never easy. That's the honest truth. It's never easy. As much as we are siblings, because in African cultural settings, what bonds you together is the blood that runs through your veins, as we say, as siblings, because we all share the same bloodline. But the dynamics of competing with each other, constantly fighting and squabbling amongst each other, siblings, getting things for this one vis-a-vis the other one, it's not easy. I say I had a unique kind of growing up experience. It couldn't have been otherwise. Otherwise, I would not be the man that I am today. But if I could say one thing that stands out, parents, especially the parent who brought the child into that relationship, has a greater role to play. You can't afford to be passive about it. There are certain things you cannot opt out of because it is your responsibility. It is you who brought this child. You take a lead role on a constant, disciplining this child, affirming this child, being there to harmonize the fights and the squabbles within the other siblings, getting together as husband and wife and address things alike. Because you can't treat this one child better than the other, because that will always be potentially a place of fights and squabbles with other siblings. You can't buy gifts for this child better than the other. If you're going to buy this one, you have to buy the other. In my case, it was harder because we were way too many. way too many to accommodate everyone's need. So what do you do as a child? You accept what you see. If there are no shoes for everyone, there are no shoes for everyone. If they bought a shoe for the other one, hang in there. Possibly yours will come.
Severe.
So Ngerechi, it's a whole level playing field, because I mean, I'm imagining a dynamic of one parent has an elder child,
Yeah.
probably getting into their 18s or even past 18 years. The other has a baby, really. How do you balance this two?
There has to be flexibility, and with flexibility is learning to adapt to certain changes. Why I'm saying this is because even in our own nuclear setups, you don't get along with your siblings, like your actual sister and brother. Sometimes you don't get along.
So your siblings, but not friends.
Yes, your siblings, but not friends, exactly. So in a blended setup, is you have to make sure these children develop friendships and allow them to have that authenticity. Let them do it on their own terms, because you can't force children to do things. You can't force children to love someone. It has to be on their own terms. The thing that parents need to understand is you have to level the playing field. It has to be very even. Meaning, whether there's an older child or a younger child, one thing you must understand is kids are very emotional beings and they are very observant. Even the 18-year-old, aki realize you're favoring a 5-year-old too much, they will start resenting that child. So what will happen is they will be taking out their frustration on this child, because that is the only person that they can be able to offend or do something. They can't do it to their parent. So for me, parents have to really take the lead role. They have to lead by example. They have to show. And while showing, they also have to make sure their words are matching their actions. Because if I'm going to, like for example, now if I'm to get married and I have children, now this man is coming with his kids. I need to learn to love these children the way they want to be loved, not on my terms. And me doing that is the other partner has to be able to also take the lead in terms of guiding your children to be able to understand you can't speak ill of each other in front of these children, because if I don't defend my partner, these kids will absorb that energy and they will adapt to that. Then what happens to these other children? Now, if you start also comparing them, assuming my children are good in athletics, for example, and these other kids don't do much, then you start telling them, na watoto wa fulani ni wazembe, now those watoto wa fulani kwa nini si wako? Find out what they like doing, find out what makes them tick, and then work on that. Pick those things and try and build a relationships. And again, as I said, kids, they really pick on energies. Don't fake it. If it's not working out, just walk away, because there is nothing as dangerous as getting kids attached to someone and then they have to lose that person all over again, over and above their actual parent that they lost. It's a big, like it takes them through a season of depression that creeps in slowly by slowly by slowly. By the time you're realizing your child is 19, they're looking forward to leaving home and they don't ever want to get in touch with you. It's because something has been building up and we are not having honest conversations in our homes. We do not want to address this. We want to tell our children, we hata ndio unafanya nikosane na partner wangu, you are making my dad get angry at me. It has nothing to do with your children. We must take responsibility for our own choices with the partners that we are getting in bed with.
These honest conversations might happen really at home. Everyone is on the same page. This is what is happening. But do these honest conversations also transcend to, let's say, the exes of both single parents? Assumably, both of them are still alive, the exes plus the family, because at one point, they're still very key to these children, either in their grandparents or the actual fathers or mothers. How do you extend these conversations to them as well? Because, as she says, the kind of energies that they're picking, they might actually not be picking from within, but even without nje nyumba.
Stanley, that comes home to me again. Because the reality is, as soon as a child gets to ask, they need to see the other family, the other parent. Your significant other must be ready for it. You could have sheltered your child for too long, and they do not know. Maybe the other significant other was an irresponsible man. He hurt deeply the relationship, does not contribute to the family, does not support paying your school fees for the child, dressing the child, buying Pampers, all these things that were cropping up that ailed the relationship, or he was always involved in infidelities, or the same could be true on the other quadrant. Could be the woman who was always promiscuous and all these things. So that brought a rift in the relationship. Now the child comes to a place where they say, I need to connect with my mother, I need to connect with my father. That's not a place you shy away from. Like I said, normalize the need to seek counseling and therapy, advisement, because it will be helpful for you in that transition. But don't deny the child to connect with that sense. Let them explore those new relationships they are looking for, that is the other parent and the family connected to that other parent. Because when I went there personally, it opened my eyes to a new reality. When I went there the first time, guess who I meet the first time? One gentleman calls me up to the stairs and say, hey, Richard. I'm like, hi. I'm climbing up the stairs, going to the rooftop of my grandfather's flat in town, and say, hi, what do you come for here? I've come to see my mother. He's like, who's your mother? So I mentioned my mom's name, Joyce, and says, that's our big sister. This guy, I was in class with him in primary, and I used to butter this guy. Kumbe, I used to butter my uncle. So my uncle was a child of one of the house helps to my grandfather. Wow. So when I get there, I say, I've just met so-and-so. He's like, yeah, that's one of our youngest siblings. So I sit down to hear from my mother and say, okay, now you need to know about my family. It's been long, you don't know my family. I'm the first sibling of 70 children. I'm like, wow. What? I'm in a shock. Now, was I ready really to get to know and explore the 70 siblings of my mother? No, up until now, I've never. The next time she calls me, now you need to be introduced to the rest of our family and get to know who we are. I go to the meeting. Back home, my mother, the brother to my dad, my mom's dad, was the former Archbishop of the Church of Uganda. So he hosts an event that harmonizes all families together. Yeah. Guess what? On my grandfather's side, when we met, the first time when we met, the 70 children were there. We were 720 grandchildren. Wow. Now I'm like, how do I get to know all these people? I told him, truth is, I will never get to know you. All I know is that we're connected. So the child could be protected from the need to know the other people because of other dynamics. You might not know. But when they ask, let them go and let them know.
At this point, you need a whole book with 70 chapters of all the 70.
There's no way you can get to explore all those relationships.
You can't.
But release them when they ask for that other experience. But let them be guided through counseling and therapy because they can be traumatic experience for them.
Yeah.
Judith, on the flip side now, because I mean, for what he describes for him was as a child, you seeking to know this other person who is not in the family. But then on the flip side, now this other family, this other person, now your ex really wants to be part of, maybe for a certain time he or she was not part of the family. But then now sasa ndio naona juu umepata mwingine, I also want to
come in.
Yes, I also want to come in. How do you also handle this?
You know, as a human race, we all desire to have identity. We all desire to belong. We want to be associated with something or someone. And what I usually advise couples is, number one, when a relationship ends, two things could happen. You could opt for a healthy co-parenting, or things could really be very, they could go south quite fast. Now, if the other partner is not participating or he's not, you're not on good terms, the thing I usually say is give yourself grace and allow yourself time to heal, but be honest to your children. Let them understand that, things are not in a good place right now, but either it's a dad or a mom, he loves you, he cares, and whatever you explain to them. But when the time comes and they're old enough and they want to have or establish a relationships, you can be able to guide them into getting into those relationships, because children will also have to, unfortunately, some of them have to learn the hard way, and they have to pick you know, to be able to understand why something didn't work out. Because some of them think maybe our dad rejected us, our mom did, and maybe it is because of you as a person, the bitterness you harbor or the resentment. You don't want to connect your children to the other partner. Or it could be that the other person actually doesn't want anything to do with the child, but eventually this child has to be able to find out on their own. And painful as it may be, you as a parent that is present, you'll have to be there to guide this child and then offer options for therapy. Because I usually say therapy is the end game. Because at the end of the day, when this child is hurt and rejected, you see, you as the parent that is present, you will not be the fallback. They have to talk to someone that is not attached or biased, someone that can be able to offer you know, guidance from a place of no bias, no connection, because it helps for them to hear from a different person that doesn't know them personally, so that they can be able to start the journey of healing. Now, when it comes to this other partner that wants to participate, the thing is...
so before you even go there, because both of you really touch on therapy,
yes,
and the need for it. So
yes,
I'm curious, and the viewer would really be curious. When you talk about therapy, because we had mentioned a child as young as even 3 years old, how do you incorporate young children into these therapy sessions as well?
You know, depending with age, therapy works in very different ways. And when you start off as children, there are so many things that you can be able to create. There's a visual bit of it where you do pictures, you create an animation, you create a story so that the child can be able to follow a certain sequence. Because when you talk to a teenager, they can be able to express themselves. But a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, they will feel something, but they cannot be able to express themselves properly. They cannot be able to articulate their words. So you do pictures, you do stories, you create a lifeline of where they can be able to follow a sequence of something. So you create a story for a child so that you build up to something. They understand that when you do a family unit, there's a mom, there's a dad, then there's a child. But then it is not always the case. Now there's mom, and there's the baby, then there's dad, and there's a baby. So you have to create a pattern. And then now this mom and this baby might meet someone. Then there has to be a dad figure that comes into the picture. But this dad is not baby's dad. So what do? You create a story so that by the time this child is getting to a certain age, they are able to pick up the pieces. They will be able to connect the dots, understanding that my story started from here. But now that I am here, what do we do next? How do we proceed from here? It becomes easy for that child to be able to now form a line that is continuous for their life, because there has to be continuity. There has to be a place where if this child wants to talk to someone, where do they fall back on? Who do they go to if they're not going to talk to mom? And if dad is not there, then who is this father figure that is there? So then that is now where with therapy now, the dynamics of having either your siblings, if it's your brothers, your uncles, that is when now they step in, those who are willing to, then they can be able to shoulder this child, or even some of the male figures in your circle. You have mentors now for your children so that they can be able to hold on to someone. They can, because I am a mom, I am a woman, I don't know what it takes to be a man. Now, if I was to raise my son by myself, I cannot teach this son to be a man when I don't know what it takes to be a man. I have to look for a male figure to be able to mentor my son. I can offer love, I can offer attention and everything else, but I cannot be able to teach my son to be a man. Yeah.
Before I interrupted you, you're elaborating on now if the ex is actually seeking to
to be able to come back into the equation. Now, this is what I usually tell people, is when there are no clear boundaries, is sometimes you have to also follow the law. Because if someone wants to come into the picture and the terms of engagement are not making sense for you, is sometimes you have to seek legal help. You have to talk to a family lawyer. You look at the options that are available. If co-parenting is not working, because sometimes you'd be like, I want to be present in my child's life, but I don't want to relate with their mom. So what do? How does it work? Then now we have to look at the legal framework, because sometimes talking might not help. Setting boundaries sometimes doesn't help. And you see, the most important thing is we have to protect the children. So you have to look at the legal alternative for how you can be able to incorporate them in. Because sometimes some of them come back not because of good intentions, but just out of malice. Yes.
Zio, so far we've established that communication is really key here. Making sure that even the child, as young as they are, they can be able to know what is comprehending around them, what is transpiring around them. So, the stages of this relationship, Mlianza, the whole dating process, and then both of them, maybe the single parents are thinking, let's get married at some point. Do these two people need the full consent of this part of these children before they get into that stage? Because now here marriage is a whole other story. It's not the other. It's not before the relationship that these two had. If it was just breaking off, they would have broken off. But then marriage here is a different story, right?
I've just come from a wedding on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And I was best man. There are things we talk about in clear colors and pictures and images. We cannot assume that you're doing it for the very first time. It's important to take note of the subject of interest. At what point did they get that child? You could have gotten the child when you're 17, 14, 15, 18, 19, so you've never been married before. So family can come into play to help you with that child. So what we do, we call it premarital counseling. We take you through counseling before you get into this place where you commit into covenant relationship. Because the subject of you getting married, that is the right choice. That's the right decision and should be encouraged. As you go through that direction, we talk about the themes related to your unique relationship. So if the child is involved, it's important that you find out from your family, would they want you to go with the child into the relationship, the newfound relationship? If so, what are some of the things that we must talk about in clear images? The child must be involved.
Yes.
You introduce the child to therapy and counseling in that particular direction, knowing that your mother has found someone and they're going to get married. And they are getting married is quite likely, this is the thing that children will not want to hear. People marry for exclusive, selfish reasons that do not have anything to do with you as a child. And that should be permissible. However, the two, when they're getting married, they should focus on the fact that there's a child that is in the picture. Because if the child is not attended to, the child will be pulling you on this side, one of the spouses. Yet, it should be pulling together. And this child at one point is going to leave you. It's going to leave your home. You're going to educate this child and going to become a mature adult and leave home and go raise a family of our own and leave the two of you by yourselves. So you should place a premium and an emphasis that as husband and wife should be the constant for the two of us. So go through premarital counseling. And then after you've gone through premarital counseling, there's another class that I recommend for those who are married. Find a marriage accountable group that will help you. It's a support group. Because in those groups, you discover that whatever that you're going to face as a married person, it's not you alone who is experiencing it. There are other people already experiencing the same experience. So they will give you support. So when you talk about counseling, sometimes it feels like you have to go to a unique office to sit in there to be counseled. No, you don't have relationship in a vacuum. There's an ecosystem around you. In this case, find other support groups where you can identify the people that are walking into the unique relationship you're going through and ask them, how's it been like? I like my friend, professor in DStv University, hosted that event at his home I told you about. And when we were coming in, you said, hey, well, there's a blue theme. This is a blended family. It could be accessorized differently, but it's still the same thing. That your relationship and my relationship could be different, but you're having the same experience. How do you go about it? How do you adopt a new adult male child in a newfound relationship? How do I bring my children with your children and forge a union that can work in a healthy way, that we support not only each other's husband and wife and enjoy our relationship, we can take excursions and retreats away from the children and they're safe and we're safe. And we come back home and we're hilariously happy as a blended family. There are people within the same ecosystem that are experiencing that. Talk about it candidly, openly. Then give children opportunity to talk. You'll be amazed some of the things children will tell you.
A final one, because I think we have about 3 or so, 4 minutes to wrap it up. As a partner, how do you know your significant other loves your own children as well as Wake in equal measure? Because one of the biggest fears a parent would have is, if I'm not there, then that would mean that my children are solely on you. So how you treat them when I'm not there, this parent would really be worried, right, Judith?
Yes, and as human beings, I usually say you can pretend for so long. And how you behave towards other people speaks a lot about you as a person and your character. Because you can claim to love children, but it's how you treat them that really matters. And I usually say, as human beings, somehow we forget very fast because our subconscious will always supersede everything else. And when you don't like someone, it will show in how you behave around that person. It will show in how you react towards that person. In fact, sometimes it is so subconscious that you might even say something you didn't mean to say, but because it is so rooted in you, you cannot act for too long. So someone doesn't need to tell you that they feel some type of way towards a child or any other person. It will show in how they behave. It will show in their response. It will show in how they react.
It's a vibration.
Yes. So it will definitely come out. And I usually say, like, while Ziwa says that, you will remain the two of you when the children leave, we also don't want to raise children that will go out there wounded, hurt, and then they go and start relationships full of traumas. We have to handle these things within our home setups by having honest conversations, open communication, flexibility, and also having very clear boundaries. That will also help you know if this person loves your family or not. Because with those boundaries is when someone cares, not even just love, when someone genuinely cares, they will go out of their way to improve their behavior. They will go out of their way to try and build a genuine friendship. Yes.
Right. Naambiwa production team wamekuwa very graceful. Tuongezea about some 10 minutes
nice.
too. So just to also really understand that whole dynamics of this parent knows that one day if I really leave, how things going to be? Are things going to be the same? Is the status going to be the same? Ama once nitoke hapa, vitu zinaweza kuwa tofauti. But then before you do that, I'm big to you do have a call. Patrick kutoka ni wapi? Ruai. Patrick, habari asubuhi?
Nzuri. Habari zenu?
Yes, sisi tuko salama. How are things in Ruai?
Not so good, not so bad.
Okay, sawa. Uko na swali au maoni on this conversation?
I had a question.
Yes, please.
That, I would just in summary frame the question. In these blended families,
Okay.
if one spouse comes, gives you the details of his or her past,
Right.
the other party does not give the details of his or her past.
Okay.
Like, for example, I can say, I am a man. I tell my spouse, the newfound love, that, I've been married before and I have a kid. My spouse does not tell me anything about her past. Later on, I come to realize there is a kid that she never talked about in the first case. Now we are together. One time, I found a kid in the house and asked, who is this kid? This is my kid. Then I asked her a question, why couldn't you reopen the first case the way I was? Now, from that point, the relationship now becomes not so good.
Right.
Would I belong to tell her that there is already a mistrust between us? And in that case, in that scenario, what do I do? Just away, forgive and move on. Or, that's the scenario. What do I do?
All right. Asante sana Patrick. Let me get a head note from the guest kama umepata swali. You okay, Richard? Okay. Right. Thank you, Patrick, for that.
Thank you.
A whole mistrust, and as he chases her away, I'll throw it to you, Richard.
When it comes to a child that has been hidden away from you, it is a red flag for the relationship.
Yes.
You cannot deny the fact that the foundation for all healthy relationships are built on trust and healthy communication. So if someone has breached that level of trust, The first thing is not to throw away the baby together with the water that has washed the baby. But the thing is, you need to go and seek a marriage therapist to help you to journey with you, together with your wife, because the problem is not the child. Mm-hmm. The problem is with the mother, who has deceitful in her conduct during the time when you're dating and courting until the time when you're married. It could be also important for me to find out, is it a come and stay kind of relationship? How come that actually she waited until you moved in together, then she brought a child? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because if that's the arrangement, that usually happens. You just mlijipata tu mnaishi pamoja. Then alikumbuka niko na katoi, wacha niende katoi. Ama family pushed her and told her, hey, that is your child. Mm-hmm. Kujia mtoto. Nianze maisha pamoja.
This often happens really, Angreche, in so many families here. Years later, actually hata kwa ndoa, I think we've seen some of these stories in media. Kwa ile siku ya harusi, ndio unaona mtu hapo anaulizwa, huyu ni nani? Yes, makosa nilisahau kukwambia. Kuna mtu hapa. How do you introduce? Does this person even start to love this child years later when they did not know he or she existed?
You know, no one forgets a child. Like, that's a whole, you know, there are things you forget. You don't forget a child, surely. Yeah. But more importantly, from his case, number one, they really are not friends. Because they're not friends even. Because by the time someone was hiding a whole information about having a child, you see, by the time you're getting into a relationship with someone, there are two things that could happen. You want to get into a relationship long term, or you're looking for a financial solution. Because most of the time, or you're just escaping from something. Because by the time you're starting to live with someone and you've decided that you want to be in a relationship with this person, you know, sometimes you do background checks. For lack of a better word, because sometimes you have to go find out who are the friends of this woman, who are the siblings, wazazi wake, wanakaa wapi, how do you live with someone that you don't know stories about? Because sometimes we harbor people in our homes that so many things could be hiding behind the shadows. And by the time you're getting to that place, the level of disloyalty is really on another level, because that person, that woman doesn't love you. She doesn't care for you. She doesn't care for her child, because honestly speaking, would you ever move to a whole different place and live with someone? And you, like, unambianga mtu, niko na mtoto, if this is a trial and error, let's try it out, but just know that I have a child. Afadhali akwambie na mapema, this relationship is not going to work, or it is going to work. Because if having a child is a deal breaker, then you just conclude it hapo na hapo.
But on the flip side, now for gentlemen who, for a man's perspective, because a woman would know she has a child. But then a man might not know he has a child out here.
Probably.
A man might not know that he has a child out there.
Yes.
Quite likely. Because the woman could have not told him that
she's pregnant.
The other day when we happened, I actually conceived the baby.
So when
except that there were multiple partners in between, I could not tell whose it is. But I know, I have a feeling in my gut, it is your baby.
So in that case, when now this child later, some years later, Akiko introduced to this family, to this a whole new family, what happens?
Like I told you, in premarital counseling, which I do, because my passion and commitment is family, we ask very clear-cut questions. Have you had sex before? That yes. Can you recollect the people that you actually had intimate experiences with? Yes. Is there a child in those relationships? Because you must have a clear knowledge of who these people are, even if they moved on in their lives. Because the information you reveal helps the person that you're getting connected with in marriage to know where you're coming from. You don't need to tell me all the details, but tell me sufficiently enough I can work with. The young lady does not know how many women you slept with, but could there be a child in any of those relationships? you prepare her for anything that circumstantially could ever happen.
So you have those conversations before you even decide we start dating.
Yes.
What is the conversation?
Yes. So that's why I asked, is this the kind that you just moved in and you didn't go through a place of accountability? Accountability is meant to help you. You, the one who's committing yourself to getting married. If you don't get into that accountable relationship where you go through premarital counseling, quite likely certain things will not see. This is what happens. If a man is involved in a relationship with a woman, you're too involved in the relationship. There are certain things that should be naturally obvious, might not be obvious to you until a third party comes into the relationship and holds you accountable in that relationship and say, you love her. Do you know her family?
All right.
Do you know her family?
Yeah.
Because in the quest of asking you, do you know her family, you might be shocked. In knowing the family, there are children that are around that family. There's a grandchild who's around that family. Take initiative to know her family. In going there, you will see some people you will not see.
Yeah.
There's something she talked about that I would want to recommend. There's a book I read way back in time, and I think it could be helpful for someone out there wondering how to work blended families and how to navigate the subject of love. It's a book by Gary Chapman. It talks about the love languages you cannot ignore.
Yeah.
And these love languages, when you find that book, the 5 love languages, it will help you significantly in the challenge that you have with your new-founded relationship and the children that are involved. It's critical to know the love language of your spouse, your children.
Yeah.
Is it a physical touch? Is it gifts? Is it words of affirmation? It helps you to journey together. And then in the same, he co-wrote a book alongside with someone, How to Thrive in Blended Families. Look out for Gary Chapman's book. They'll be very helpful. I've read them, and they're really, really wonderful resource for your union.
Right. Ziong Richie, I can say our time is up. Any last words you feel like are really pertinent, so that the viewer really needs to know? I take away home. I'll start with Ziong Richie.
We need to have honest conversations in our relationships, and before you even get into any relationship, conduct an interview. I tell people, when you start a relationship, please ask those questions, ask the hard questions, so that it becomes uncomfortable when you're beginning, but then you get to blend into a situation where you understand each other. Create an environment that is so conducive for you to always have honest communication, because when you don't have conversations, now you find yourself in a relationship, it's 5 years down the line, there could be a potentially something that could come in and ruin the whole relationship. So let's just invest in having honest conversations, open communication, and also allow yourself to have some flexibility. Just have that critical thinking, but also extend yourself some grace to embrace new things as they come in. Thank you.
Zio, briefly.
A man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. It is the man who leaves. Women readily leave their fathers. They just join another father. So as a man, if you hear that there are children out there that are brought to you, women come with a whole lot just like men. But in this case, I'd encourage you, seek therapy and you will thrive in your blended family.
Right.
Find it in your heart to genuinely forgive whatever past mistakes and faults and failures your significant other had been involved into, whether they have fathered or nurtured a child outside marriage, and start a new script with together. Then give these children a predictable image of how marriage looks like with your newfound relationship with that person.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Judith Ngerechi. She's a wellness coach, as well as Richard Ziwa, the Malist, counseling psychologist. Asante Nisana for helping us have this conversation back at home. I hope you've learned. This conversation continues on our digital platforms, navigating the whole blended families and the kind of parenting styles that